Alright, hello everybody, I'm BGM. We're doing live deck building tonight. Tonight we are building cats and dogs in the form of Rin and Seri Inseparable. They are a 3-color Naya commander, they are a cat, and they are also a dog. They are a 4/4, and they say whenever you cast a dog spell, you make yourself a cat, and whenever you cast yourself a cat spell, you make yourself a dog. You can also pay 3 mana, activate this thing, and deal X damage, where X is the amount of dogs you control to something. And also, you gain life where that's the amount of cats you got. We are playing cats, we are playing dogs, we are playing the cutest tribes smashed together in the form of Rin and Seri. I think we are obviously going in a token direction with these colors and these creature types, because we want lots of each creature type so that Rin and Seri can have relevant activations. And Rin and Seri are removal in the command zone. We can tap this thing and kill stuff and also gain chunks of life. It's real exciting, and when I thought about building this deck, the first card I gravitated towards was this here Felidar Retreat. It's a 4-mana mono-white enchantment that says landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, you get to choose what you want to do. You can either make yourself a 2/2 cat, or you can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. It's real good. It can make your board big, or it can make your board wide. It also makes relevant creature types in the form of 2/2 cats. Hello everybody, we are doing some live deck building tonight. If you have a suggestion for our cats and dogs deck, please put it in the chat, y'all. The next card we're going to be looking at is Cutzil. Cutzil is a legendary green and white cat creature from the Caverns of Ixalan expansion. He's $1, he's 3 mana, he's a 3/3, and he says that your opponents can't cast free spells. Alright, they can't cast spells during our turn, and whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than their base power deals combat damage, we draw ourselves a card. This thing's great. It's going to stop our opponents from interacting with us during our turn, and it will also draw some cards when we deal damage. We primarily are going to be dealing combat damage to win the game. So this thing is going to stop our opponents from interacting with us, and also draw some cards. Ooh, hey Equinox, hey Ethan, hey Ryan, how's it going? Poison Dart Frog, that's not a cat, that's not a dog. Let's pull up a Poison Dart Frog. Poison Dart Frog, okay, undeniably adorable, look at that face. How am I supposed to say no to that face? Look at this thing, it's a 1/1, it's got reach, it can tap for a mana of any other color, and you can pay 2 mana to give it Death Touch to make it a spicy blocker. I like it, it's thematic, but it ain't a cat and it ain't a dog, so I wouldn't recommend it for this deck particularly, but thank you very much for the suggestion. If you rule 0, how about Rin and Seri Inseparable? Wait, this thing's not banned, is it, the Caffeine Fiend? Rad name, Caffeine Fiend. Frogs are they are dog adjacent. Steely, hey pup, how's it going? Steely Resolve. Hey everybody, we are building cats and dogs on our community deck tonight. Right now we have a suggestion from Pup for a $21 green enchantment for 2 mana called Steely Resolve. This thing says, as it comes into play, you choose a creature type. We're probably going to pick cats, or we're going to pick dogs. Creatures of the chosen type can't be the targets of spells or abilities. Either creature type we pick for this spell, it's going to give our commander protection, because our commander is both types. This thing is 21 bucks. It's real cool. Yeah. So, something to be mindful of when playing this thing. Creatures of the chosen type can't be the targets of spells or abilities. Means us. We can't target our stuff anymore if we play this, but neither will anybody else. And I think in a token deck, that's perfectly valuable. Ooh, Thyler Hacky says, Enoch Guide. The Enoch Guide sounds like a cat. Is it a cat? Maybe it's a dog. Nope, it's a dog. This is likely eroded to be dog, but I don't know how to check that. So this 1/1/2 mana thing says when it enters the battlefield, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it, or we can search a library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it in on the top of our library. Okay, if we have ETB triggers, this could be relevant. I feel like it doesn't do a whole lot, but okay, it is in fact a dog, probably. Oh wait, the hounds and dogs counter... Oh, do they? That's a bummer. Aeon says Awakening. How's it going, Aeon? Hey everybody, we are building cats and dogs tonight on our community deck tech. I'm BGM. I usually use green screen effects to make silly little Magic the Gathering videos here on TikTok, but on lives we do community deck building. We're building cats and dogs. If you have a suggestion for cats and dogs, you can put it in the chat and I'll put it in a Moxfield deck list. You can see all of your suggestions by going to Moxfield.com and checking out BiggerGayerMagic. Check out the dated deck list. This is Awakening. It's a 4-mana, $6 mono green enchantment. It says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, untap all creatures and lands. I love it. This thing's amazing. It does hit your opponents. So unfortunately, you will be giving your opponents untapped creatures and also untapped lands, which is somewhat dubious. But if we can find a way to tap our creatures for mana or tap our creatures for value, it could be very cool to activate all those abilities every turn. That could be a lot of... Hey, Moon Plays Magic! If you guys are into MTG content, please go follow my friend Moon. She's a vibe. She talks about playing with her family and also just being a good vibe. Go check out Moon. She says Osier Talk. Osier Talk is a rad little token tripler. Osier Talk is mono white, it's 6 mana, and it says if you would make some creature tokens, you make triple those tokens. It's 35 bucks, it's pricey, it's worth a proxy. It has a relevant death trigger in the form that it flips into a land on death. You can also activate it while it's a land to flip it back into a creature if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn. Yeah, this thing is one of the most exciting cards that came out of Caverns of Ixalan. It's great. I bought a single of this when it came out because I knew it was just going to jump up in price. Because white tokens are such like a prominent strategy within Commander. Almost all white decks make tokens. And this thing will triple your output if you're making creatures. Great suggestion, Moon. Thanks for stopping by. Jim Bob says, release the hounds. Let's talk about releasing the hounds. Reminds me of Simpsons. Release the hounds. Sounds like a new Capenna card to me. Okay. Release the hounds. Release the hounds. Release the dogs is an MTG Foundation card. It is a sorcery, it's 4 mana, and it's mono white, and has an excellent little art. I really like the little one. The little guy has the best vibe, and this thing says you make 4 1/1 dogs. I kinda love it. It's 60 cents. It's got cute flavor text, it's got cute art, and it's super relevant in a Rin and Seri deck because it makes a number of dogs. And dogs are what make our commander super valuable, because this thing activates and deals damage equal to the amount of dogs we got, and then we gain life equal to the amount of counts we got. Thank you very much for the follow, Chan TikTok, I appreciate it. Yeah, this thing's really cool. I also love that it's a budget card at 69 cents. Nice. Cool suggestion. The Caffeine Fiend says Rin and Seri Inseparable is the playtest version. This is a playtest version. Menacing Attack is a good enchantment. Menacing Attack. Menacing Attack. I'm sorry, Menacing Attack is not coming up. We are just getting Menacing Ogre. Obelisk of Erd. Pup says an Obelisk of Erd. I've heard of that card, but I'm not familiar, Pup. What is the Obelisk of Erd? The Obelisk of Erd is a colorless mana for... is 6 colorless mana for a $5 artifact that says you can convoke it, and it enters the battlefield. You choose a creature type, those creatures get +2/+2. Very cool. We are going to go wide strategy. We do want lots of cats. We want lots of dogs. We want relevant activations of Rin and Seri. And this thing cares about the number because we can convoke this thing out. If we can get to 6 creatures, we can maybe cast this thing for free. We can maybe do it to reduce the mana cost of this thing on the turn that we make a bunch of tokens, because we can convoke with tokens that just came out this turn. So we could pump this thing out potentially really early in a game. I really want to see your opinion on the playtest version. What is the playtest version? Legion's Loyalty. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. I use green screen effects to make silly little MTG content here on TikTok and on lives. We do community deck building. We are building Rin and Seri Inseparable. It is a cats and dogs deck. It is a commander deck. We want lots of cats, we want lots of dogs, and I want to spell Legion's Loyalty. Legion's Loyalty, Legion's Initiative, Legion's Landing. I'm sorry, why is Legion's Loyalty not coming up? Legion Loyalty? Maybe there's no S. Legion Loyalty. I know I've heard of this card. Legion Loyalty, alright, Legion Loyalty. This thing is $1.50, it's an enchantment, it's in mono white, and it's 8 mana. It says the creatures you control have Myriad. Okay, let's talk about Myriad and how broken it could be in this deck. Myriad means that when your creature attacks, you create a copy of that creature for each opponent it could have attacked. but didn't. So you make you make 2 additional copies in a 4-player commander game if everybody's alive. Those copies enter tapped and attacking the opponent that they could have attacked. It's a great way to get ETB triggers. It's my favorite way to use Myriad is with the ETB triggers. It's great. It's gonna just create oodles and boodles of tokens for us, and if we activate Rin and Seri on our second main phase after our Myriad triggers have resolved, and maybe our stuff lived, we're gonna have really relevant Rin and Seri activations. You do get rid of the tokens at end of turn, so that second main phase is gonna be real spicy for us. My bad, I meant Echoing Assault. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Echoing Assault. Echoing Assault. Echoing Assault. Why is this Echoing Assault not correct? Echoing Assault. Okay, this one's rad. This thing came out in the Bloomborough Commander decks. It's $3. It's a red enchantment. It's 5 mana, and it says creature tokens you control have menace. And whenever you attack a player, choose target non-token creature that's attacking that player. Create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1. The token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking that player, sacrificing at the beginning of the end step. Whenever you attack a player, choose target non-token creature. Yeah, cool. So whenever you attack them, you make a fancy token 1/1 of something that's attacking them. Could be really cool to double up on ETBs. You do get rid of the token at end of turn. And this thing does make your tokens menacey, which means you're going to be getting in for damage. Very cool little Bloomborough card. Also a rad art. We got a Mouseketeer. Oh, right. Annie Joins Up. Annie Joins Up. Oh my god. Annie Joins Up is probably my favorite card to play from Thunder Junction. This thing is rad. It's $4. Wizco770, thank you very much for the follow. Annie Joins Up is rad. This thing is $4, and if you have a Naya deck or a deck that runs a lot of legendaries and Naya colors, y'all should be playing this. This thing's rad. It enters, it's a little bit of removal. You get to move around 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and your legendary creatures that have triggered abilities trigger twice. Triggered abilities are anything that says when or whenever, and this Rin and Seri have 2 of them. They say whenever we cast a cat, we make a dog, and whenever we cast a dog, we make a cat. This thing's rad. It's gonna make us so many tokens so fast because it's gonna be doubling up on our commander's triggers. It's a good time, y'all. I really like it. It's $4. I'm glad it's color restrictive. I'm glad you can't see it in every deck. Communal Brewing. Communal Brewing. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. I use green screen effects to make silly little MTG content. We're doing live deck building. We're building Rin and Seri. If you want to see any of the viewer suggestions, y'all can check out my Moxfield page. Check out the dated deck list. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thank you for suggestions. This is Communal Blue Brewing. It came out also in the Bloomborough Precons. It's $3. It's mono green. It's 3 mana. And it says when this thing enters the battlefield, you may have any number of target opponents draw a card. Put a counter on it for each person that draws a card this way. And whenever you cast a creature spell, that thing gets an additional X counters, where X is the amount of brew counters on this thing. It's great. It's a great way to start your creatures off with some with some counters. In a 4-player commander game, you're just gonna let people draw cards. Garlic Toast, God, thank you very much for the follow. This thing is rad. It's a great way to have your thing start with counters. We are in relevant colors to do a +1/+1 counter strategy. We saw a Felidar Retreat, which on landfall could put a counter on everything. Does this thing work on tokens whenever you cast a creature spell? So unfortunately, this thing will not work on the tokens, but it will work on the non-tokens. It's very cool. It's a good time. I've already lost this card a few times. Pup, thank you very much for the token doublers. Let's get them out of the way. I saw that you put Doubling Season in there earlier while I was typing something else, Pup. I appreciate it. Mondrak is rad. He looks like the Millennium Falcon. He came out in a set called All Would Be One about a year or 2 ago. He is $50, and he says that you make twice the tokens you would normally make. He's worth a proxy. Also, I love that his like body, like not the torso part, but like I love that his body, I just imagine it constantly screaming. I don't know, I love it. I think it's a cool design. I like the way the art works. And mechanically, the card is interesting because it has an activated ability where you can sacrifice some permanents. It's going to sacrifice some creatures and put an indestructible counter on Mondrak. It's a great way to stop it from dying to a board wipe. You can also activate the ability using Phyrexian mana as opposed to conventional mana, making it more flexible. You just have to hold up a single mana, and then you can put an indestructible counter by sacking some creatures at instant speed, keeping it on the board. It's great, y'all. I love it. I bought one when it came out for like 30 bucks, and it's only gone up. Highly recommend a proxy. Helm of the Host. Yeah. Warnosk says Helm of the Host. Helm of the Host is a rad little legendary artifact that says equip 5, right? Yeah, so this thing's got 4 mana, it's legendary, it's an equipment, it's got equip 5. So you gotta cast it for 4, equip it for 5, meaning that it's a total mana investment of 9 before you get this thing to trigger on your combat step. And it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you make a token of the thing that this thing is equipped to, and the token's not legendary. So this is a great way to make multiple copies of your commanders. Multiple copies of your commanders will each have their own separate triggers. So whenever we cast something after we made some copies of our boys, we're going to get even more tokens because there's going to be more of them to trigger. It's a great time. It is a little bit of a mana investment. And often when it's cast in the early game, your opponents will have a turn to deal with it before you start getting incredible value. It's a good time. It's $10. It's been sitting about $10 for like at least a couple years, I feel like. Reed Gans says Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. Jetmir is rad. Jetmir actually has his own fancy version of the Secret Lair that came out for Rin and Seri for the Cats and Dogs deck. It had Anointed Procession. It had a fancy Soul Ring. This is Jetmir. He's $13. He's 4 mana. He's legendary. He's a cat demon. He's a 5/4, and he says creatures get +1/+0 as long as he's got 3 or more of them. Creatures get +1/+0, have trample as long as you have 6 or more of them, and they get +1/+0, have double strike as long as you got 9 or more of them. So once you hit 9 creatures with this thing, you are going to have everything having +3/+0, vigilance, trample, and double strike. It's going to be a game-winning board state. Sadistic Llamas, thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, this thing's rad. Because it came out in the Cats and Dogs Secret Lair, we were looking at the cat side previously. This is the dog side. I am so sorry for bumping the mic. Yeah, here it is. It's rad. It's $13. It would be a great alternative commander for our deck. And it's got a cats and dogs side. It's very cool. Great suggestion. Tribute to the Shattering Skull. How's it going, Shattering Skull? Shattering Skull says a tribute to the World Tree. I quite like this spell. I think it's a very nice little spell. I don't think it's worth $17, though.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry. It's 3 mana. It's a mono green enchantment. Says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. But if it ain't power 3 or greater, you put some counters on it. 2 of them, to be exact. It's real cool. It's a great way to make your tokens more relevant. This, unlike that other thing we were looking at earlier, this does work on tokens because it's an entering trigger and not a cast trigger. So this thing can make your tokens more relevant, and we likely will be winning through tokens, because tokens is just such a supported strategy within this deck type. Thank you very much to Aunt Benjamino for the follow. I appreciate it. Alright, Pup, I saw you put Primal Vigor in there. Pup, do you just have a list of token doublers that you're putting in here? Let's talk about Primal Vigor. Primal Vigor is the fair and balanced token doubler. It's $5, and this thing says that if you would make tokens, or anybody would make tokens, you make twice that many tokens. It works on your opponents too, and the same thing is true for +1/+1 counters. It's doubling season, but not $50, and also fair. I like it, it's cool. This one, they just had a version for the Black Panther come out in the Marvel Secret Lair, and that version's $6. It's a cool little card, and your opponents will likely love it. Ooh, Gabe. Hey, Gabe. Good to see you, Gabe. Always happy to see you. Gabe says Pack Leader. Pack Leader is not a card I'm familiar with, but it sounds like a dog. Okay, it's a wolf. This wolf is a 1/1 wolf creature, and it says... Oh, wait, this is Ascendant Pack Leader. Pack Leader. Pack Leader, here he is. I don't know why, but this dog feels very British to me. It's 2 mana, it's a 2/2, it says that other dogs get +1/+1, and whenever this thing attacks, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you got. This thing is rad, he's 60 cents, and he has better facial hair than I could ever have. He's a good time, we love a budget card. So all these cards that say, like, a creature type gets +1/+1, those card types are known as lords. This is a dog lord right here, and don't he look regal? I really enjoy the art. He looks very... I don't know. He just looks so dignified. I love him. Great suggestion. Hungry Lynx, Garlic Toast, God says a Hungry Lynx. Hungry Lynx is one of my favorite cards from the Cat Precon that came out like 8 years ago, and I'm gonna tell you why. It gives your opponents little 1/1 rats with Death Touch, but it says that your cats have protection from rats. So your little Death Touchy rats do not... That you are giving your opponents, by the way. You're giving all your opponents a 1/1 with Death Touch, and you're saying that your cats have protection from rats. So your rats, they can still block your cats, they just won't deal any damage, and your cats will be safe. It's rad. It's very fun for me, because like a 1/1 with Death Touch really changes people's combat calculations in the way that they attack. It's real fun. And giving everybody one, delicious. Highly recommend. Especially when they are not able to kill your creatures. Nakatl Warpride. Nakatl Warpride. I don't think I'm familiar with the Nakatl Warpride. Nakatl Warpride. Okay, it's 6 mana, mono green, 3/3 cat warrior. It says that this thing must be blocked by exactly one creature if able. Whenever this thing attacks, put X tokens into play, tapped and attacking, that are copies of this thing, where X is the number of creatures defending player controls. Remove the tokens from the game at the end of the turn. I love this. Let's talk about this. So this thing has layers to how it actually interacts. This thing's great. So it's a 3/3, it's $2, 6 mana, and it says that your other... So in the way, this thing in a roundabout way says that when you attack with it, your opponents cannot block other creatures, because this thing makes a token for each creature that your opponents could block with. My concern about this thing is that it's only a 3/3, and if they kill the original, you might be out of luck. Because you do have to remove the tokens at the end of turn. But if you can find a way to make those tokens big, you're probably going to win the game when you swing with this thing. Very cool. Warnosk says a Regal Caracol. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. I'm sad that TikTok's dying, but I make green screen effects from MTG content on here. And on lives we do community deck building. We're building cats and dogs. If you want to suggest a cat or a dog for our deck, please put it in the chat, y'all. One last thing I forgot to mention about that Nakatl Warpride is that our commander's activated ability cares about the number of cats we control, and if we activate it during combat by somehow giving it vigilance, we can get a bunch of life with those things that Nakatl Warpride makes. And speaking of tokens, this here Regal Caracol is a 5 mana 3/3 cat that says other cats you control get +1/+1, and that when this creature enters, you make 2 little 1/1 lifelinking cats. But because this thing is a cat lord, you treat those things like 2/2 lifelinking cats. So you're putting out a total of 7 power and toughness for 5 mana, and you're giving your other cats lifelink as part of the Lord effect. This thing is $2. It was originally printed in Amonkhet block. And also, it's a vibe. Oh, Sword of the Squeak. Equinox Paradox says a Sword of the Squeak. Sword of the Squeak is a 2 mana artifact equipment for $2.50. It says whenever a creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control with base power and toughness 1. We're going to be making a bunch of tokens. Whenever a hamster, mouse, rat, or squirrel you control enters, you may attach this thing to it. Unfortunately, those creature types are not cats and dogs. Crookshank Posting says, what power level you doing? The token doublers and Ocelot Pride is great, but obviously expensive and strong. Hey, Crookshank Posting. I am BGM. I use green screen effects to make silly little MTG content here on TikTok, and on lives, we do community deck building. Whatever goes into this is whatever y'all put in the chat, and you guys can check out all the viewer suggestions on my Moxfield page with the dated deck list. I like to see what you guys would play in this deck, and I like to basically judge your card choices and turn it into content. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. Yeah, so basically I talk about Commander on live, and we just vibe. We listen to pop music too. This is a Leonin Warbleeder. Holy wow, this thing is $8. I did not expect this thing to be $8. I have a few of these kicking around binders. This little 4 mana 4/4 cat soldier says that whenever this thing attacks, you make yourself 2 1/1 cat creature tokens with lifelink that are tapped and attacking. I love this thing. I think it's a cool attack trigger. You put this thing on the battlefield, you wait a turn for it to have hate, for it to be able to attack, or you give it haste. It pops out 6 mana, or 6 power and toughness when it attacks, because you're getting 4 power toughness for the cast of the cost of the card, and when he attacks, he makes the 2 1/1s. He is a 4/4, he's a little bit mild for commander. Like, you want to be careful where you swing this thing, because you don't want it to die, because the way that this thing generates value is by getting multiple attack triggers. Or by seeing multiple combats. We need this guy to live. I also think it's really cool that the tokens that this thing makes have lifelink. Great suggestion. Wow, I did not expect that thing to be $8, y'all. DeAmp Benjamino says Coalition Relic. Coalition Relic, I believe, is a mana rock. I think it's 3 mana. Yeah, it's 3 mana. It's a rock. It says it taps for any color. It's 60 cents. It's colorless. You can also put a counter on it by tapping it. So if you, my methodology, it took me it took me years to understand how you're supposed to use this card. This thing says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may remove all the counters from it. You may... Wait, no, you may not. It's just remove them. It's not a may. Add 1 mana of any color for the charge counters on this. So what you want to do is, if you're not going to use this thing in a turn cycle, you want to put a charge counter on it, so that it'll make 1 mana with the trigger at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, and then you can also tap it for mana. But you do have to remember to do that. Second Harvest. Second Harvest is a rad little token card. I think it's mono green. It's an instant. It's 4 mana, and it says for each token you control, you put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. It's great, y'all. This thing is $8, 4 mana, mono green, and it says it doubles your board presence if you're particularly in a token strategy. I love it. I was lucky to open one of these in Innistrad block about 10 years ago. It's a good time. Especially if your opponent thinks that they can kill you because you don't have enough blockers. Then, 4 mana, surprise, I actually do have enough blockers. Torian Maul... Ethan, I ain't afraid of no Torian Mauler. Well, you know what? Maybe I am afraid of Torian Mauler. It is a little bit intimidating to spell. Oh my god, Ethan, you're the man. Great job, Ethan, for spelling it correctly. Thank you. This thing is 3 mana, it's mono red, it's a shapeshifter, meaning that it's a cat, but it's also a dog, and that whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This thing is rad, it's in both of our relevant creature types, so it's going to see all the Lord effects on all the Lords we play for cats and dogs. And it's going to get bigger the more stuff our opponents do, becoming a more relevant threat as the game progresses. This thing is rad. It goes in every tribal deck running red. It's a good time, y'all. I highly recommend it. It's also $4. Launch the Fleet. Uprising 18 says launch the fleet. Launch the feet. Launch the fleet. Launch the fleet is a white spell. It's a sorcery. It's a single mana, and it has Strive, meaning that you want to pay an additional 1 mana as many times as you want to make the spell have a more impactful effect. And this thing says, until in a turn, any number of target creatures gain. Whenever this creature attacks, you create a 1/1 soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. This thing is cool for a token strategy. I imagine it could be excellent in the mono white soldier token strategy in my rel. I feel like this thing has a great place in there. I'm not, to tell you the truth, because we are in a tribal strategy, I'm not sure I would run this particular token generator, but it is very cool, and I like that it's flexible in the way that you can pay any amount of mana you want to have bigger effects. Mr. D-Man says Harsh Mercy. Harsh Mercy is not a card I'm familiar with. Harsh Mercy is white, it's 3 mana, it's a sorcery, and it's 50 cents. It came out in Commander Masters, and it says that each player chooses a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the type chosen this way, and they cannot be regenerated. Excellent, 10 out of 10. How did I not know this card exists? This card is only 50 cents. Oh wait, it says each player. That's a bummer. Okay, I changed my mind. That each player is doing a lot of work. If it just said choose a creature type, this card would be like $40 because it's so low costed. But it says each player chooses a type, and it allows them to save their board. But if someone's doing generic good stuff, I'm sure you can kill a lot of stuff with this. Also, it's 60 cents. Coat of Arms. Okay, Coat of Arms. Coat of Arms can end a game in this deck because this thing is $21. It says 5 mana artifact. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. Meaning that, for example, if 2 goblins, goblin warriors, and a goblin shaman are on the battlefield, each gets +2/+2. Cool. So the way that this works is it's going to affect our cats and it's going to affect our dogs, but it's going to affect them separately except for the commander, which is both creature types. So if we have 10 cats and 5 dogs, our dogs are going to get +4/+4 and our cats are going to get +9/+9 because it doesn't count itself. So you're going to take your total of the creature type and do -1, and that's the buff that all your creatures get of that type. You do have to be careful when playing this card because it does work for your opponents as well. If your opponents are playing another token tribal deck, they might blow you out with this thing if they already have a more developed board than you. Please be careful, use discretion. It's a great card. It's $22 and it's a great proxy. Great candidate for a proxy. Prowling Seropard. Fatal Rain says a Prowling Seropard. So I really love the art of this deck. I think it's really imaginative, like, creature-wise. Like, mythical creature-wise. Because it's a cat snake. This is a noodly cat snake. It came out in Almond Cat. The art I find disturbing. I don't love the art, but also I love the art. And look at him. Look at him. Look how unnerving he is. Cats don't look like that. It's very weird. This thing can't be countered. It's a 4/3, and it says the creature spells we got can't be countered. It's great if your meta counters a lot of spells. It's $3. It's mono green. It is a cat, but it's also a snake. It's a good time. I play one in my cat deck, but to tell you the truth, my playgroup doesn't see a lot of counters. So it does a little less work than you might think. For my playgroup, at least. Do we already have a No, Evan, we don't have a Maskwood Nexus. Yeah, Evan, great suggestion. So Maskwood Nexus would be a great way to really turn on, or just like the creature potential of this deck. Maskwood Nexus, I'm sure will... What the hell does this thing say? This thing is $5, it's 4 mana, and it says creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for spells in your deck and also in your graveyard, and this thing can tap and make yourself some shapeshifters. It's a good time, y'all. It makes all your cats dogs and all your dogs cats. So when you activate Rin and Seri for 3 mana while this thing's on the battlefield, you just deal damage and gain life equal to the amount of cats and dogs you control in their totality. It's a good time, y'all. This thing makes so much sense in this deck. Great suggestion, Ethan. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. I use green screen effects to make silly little MTG videos here on TikTok, and on live we do community deck building. We're building cats and dogs tonight. We're running Rin and Seri, and whenever we cast ourselves a cat, we make a dog, and whenever we cast ourselves a dog, we make a cat. We can also activate it to deal some damage and gain some life. We're taking community suggestions. If you want to see any of the suggestions we already talked about, y'all can check out the dated Moxfield deck list, and y'all can get there to Moxfield via the link tree. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thank you for all the suggestions. This is Roxanne Star Savant. It's 5 mana, and it came out in Thunder Junction. It's a 4/3, it's a cat druid, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you make yourself a tap colorless artifact named Meteorite. When the meteorites enter the battlefield, you get to deal 2 damage to any target, and also the meteorites tap for mana. And whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, you add 1 mana of any type that artifact token produced. So it makes your artifacts tap for 2. Good time. It's just a cat. It generates a bunch of rocks. It's ramp for 5 mana, but it keeps making the ramp, and it also keeps making little shock triggers where you get to hit things for 2 damage. It's cool. I tell you what, though, I have never seen this card played. I imagine it would be a very fun commander, especially because it doubles up that mana. Ryzilla says that Roxanne is goated. Pup says Reese the Redeemed. I saw that someone put Ogier Tak in the chat. We saw Ogier Tak earlier. It's a 6 mana white legendary that triples our token output for creatures. This is Reese the Redeemed. He's a hybrid Selesnian mana. He's a 1/1, and he has 2 activated abilities. You can tap him for 3. You can make yourself a little green and white elf warrior creature token. Or you can tap this thing for 6 and say that for each creature token you control, put a token into play that's a copy of the creature. I feel like we are in a token strategy with Rin and Seri because it cares about the amounts of cats and the amounts of dogs we've got, and risks, if we cast him, we can activate him for 6 and double both of those numbers if they're tokens. Reese is just a cool card. He doubles tokens. He is a great commander for a strategy called Elf Ball, where you just make insane amounts of elves. Since we're running Maskwood Nexus, you should run Realmbreaker, the invasion tree. Oh my god, that's disgusting. Let's do it. Realmbreaker is a cool little artifact. It's 3 mana, and it says that you can activate it for 2, and target opponent mills 3 cards. You can put a land that they mill onto the battlefield tapped under your control. It gains if this land would leave the battlefield, you exile it instead. You can also pay 10 mana, sacrifice Realmbreaker, find all the Praetors. The Praetors are the cards in Magic that, like, do something great for you and have some value for your opponents. It's great, y'all. Elish Norn, Jingataxius, Urabrask. Game breaking. If you have this a Phyrexian deck and you're running a bunch of Praetors, and someone resolves like this trigger, you've lost the game. Like, don't sit it out. Just concede. Bojag says Jetmir. So we looked at Jetmir a little bit earlier. Jetmir, the short version of Jetmir, says that if we got 9 creatures, our creatures that we control get +3/+0, have Vigilance, Trample, and Double Strike, and we get those abilities incrementally. At 3 creatures, our things get +1/+0 and get Vigilance. At 6 creatures, they get Trample +1/+0, and at 9, they get Double Strike and +1/+0. So if you got 9 creatures, they get +3/+0, Vigilance, Trample, and also Double Strike. It's a good time. Excellent card in Naya colors for a go-wide strategy, which I believe we're in, because this thing wants to have lots of cats, lots of dogs, to have relevant triggers. Ooh, Garlic Toast. I love Miri. Miri, Weatherlight Duelist, is a fun little cat, and it kind of wins games. It's real good, y'all. It also came out in the cat precon about 9 years ago. It's 3 mana, it's a 3/2, it's a cat warrior with first strike, and whenever this thing attacks, each opponent can't block with more than 1 creature this combat. And as long as this thing is tapped, no more than 1 creature can attack you each combat. It is so good, y'all. I can't tell you the amount of times that this thing has stopped me from dying because I could only swing with the 1 creature. This thing is so good. Also, the way that it gets in for damage when this thing attacks, each opponent can't block with more than 1 creature. The way that it's worded so well that it says each opponent, it's so good. This card is so good, y'all. This card is $5. It's great. I don't know what else to tell you. It's so good, and it's also so satisfying to play. But it is a stacks piece, so be aware of that. Altar of the Goyf. We're going to talk about an Altar of the Goyf. Altar of the Goyf is a card that is spelled with 1 T. Altar of the Goyf. I'm sorry, Altar of the Goyf isn't coming up. So we're going to talk about an Ocelot Pride. Ocelot Pride came out in Modern Horizons 3. It's pricey. It's $43, and it's been at $43 pretty much since Modern Horizons 3 came out. It's 1 mana, and it says First Strike, Lifelink, and also Ascend. This thing says that at the beginning of our end step, if you gain life this turn, you make yourself a little 1/1 cat creature token, and if you have the City's Blessing, you actually just make a token for each token that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So if you're making your tokens during your main phases, this thing, if you have the City's Blessing, which is 10 permanents, it'll double your token output every turn. It's rad. It's amazing. It's cool, but it does only trigger at your end step, and it does only trigger if you gained life, which isn't really a problem for us because we can gain life with Rin and Seri's activated ability. Over, maybe you'll be coming over again. Stay says Marisi. Marisi, Breaker of the Coil. My friend has a Marisi Turbo Fog deck, and I hate it. Marisi is a 4-drop, 5/4 cat warrior, and it says your opponents can't cast spells during your combat. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you goad each creature that player controls. Very cool. Goad means that those creatures have to attack, and they have to attack somebody other than you, if possible. It's cool, y'all. It's a 5/4, it's a relevant body, it is a cat, and a relevant creature type, and it does stop our opponents from interacting during combat. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you goad the creatures, meaning that they likely will not be swinging at you until the very end of the game. Blade Historian. Blade Historian. Blade Historian is 4 mana. It is a 2/3, and it says attacking creatures you control have double strike. It's a human cleric. Okay, here's Blade Historian. Oh, Maskwood Nexus. Yeah, so we'll talk about... Yeah, Maskwood Nexus is what's the actual talking point here. Maskwood Nexus is rad, and because we're kind of playing a commander that's at odds with itself, because this thing really wants to be 2 tribal decks at the same time. It wants to be a cat deck, and it also wants to be a dog deck. And we fix all of this deck's problems by playing Maskwood Nexus. This little 4-drop artifact says that creatures you control are every creature type, and the same is true for stuff in our graveyards and in our deck. And we can generate shapeshifters by paying 3 and tapping this thing. It's a great way to generate creature advantage. It turns on our commander's activated ability fully to say it just deals damage and gains us life equal to the amount of cats and dogs we control total now. It's great. And it also turns on all the lords that only care about dogs or only care about cats. It'll turn on all the lords for that effect as well. Hour of Reckoning. Hour of Reckoning. Excuse me. Hour of Reckoning is a 7-mana convocable mono-white sorcery, and it is 50 cents. It says destroy all non-token creatures. I love these effects. There are a few board wipes in white that say destroy all non-token creatures, and they are my favorite and only board wipes I run in my token decks, because I really like to commit to a theme. Thank you, Wild Cards, for the follow. I appreciate it. This thing's rad. It is 7 mana, but Convoke means that we can tap our creatures to cast it. So we're going to be able to have access to this board wipe if our game's going smoothly really early on in the game, probably likely turn 4 or 5. Very cool. Thank you for the follow. All right. Dread Demon, Leyline of the Meek. Leyline of the Meek. Leyline of the Meek, thank you very much for the follow, Joe Pa. Leyline of the Meek is a white Leyline, and it enters the battlefield for free if you have it in your opening hand, and it says creature tokens get +1/+1. Very cool. It could be a free pump, and it could potentially gain us enough value early on to cause significant damage early on in the game. Another card that I find a little spicier and a little bit more fun is Inspiring Leader. So Inspiring Leader is one of my favorite cards because I run a companion commander deck that is in black and white, and because the backgrounds from the Baldur's Gate 3 set says commanders creatures you own have creatures control gain +2/+2, it is giving your commanders those abilities. So because it's giving your commander those abilities, if you have more than one commander, you get the ability twice. So when you have both of your companions out, it gives it... Excuse me, not both of your companions, both of your commanders out, it gives your board +4/+4 for tokens. It's rad. It's less than $1. It's real fun. Alright, we're going to take a few more and call it a night. We're going to talk about Enduring Courage. Hey everybody, I use green screen effects to make silly little Magic Gathering videos here on TikTok and on Live's video community deck building. If you want to see any of the viewer suggestions we talked about during this live, y'all can check out the link on the profile and head to the Moxfield page, check out the dated deck list, and you can see all the viewer suggestions that we talked about tonight. This is Enduring Courage. This is another Dog Glimmer card that came out during Duskmourn. It's a 3/3. It is itself a dog, which is rad. It's 4 mana and it's an enchantment. It says that creatures you control get +2/+0 and gain haste. But you have to kill this thing twice, because when this thing dies, it enters the battlefield as a non-creature version of itself. But I think it still counts as a dog, which is interesting. It's a good time, y'all. Alright, that's gonna be our number 5. What's our number 4? Baby Tree says Flawless Maneuver. I love Flawless Maneuver. Flawless Maneuver makes for such good gameplay moments. I love that they keep printing new versions of Flawless Maneuver because it keeps shooting back up to $10. It's 3 mana or 0 mana if you control your commander, and it says that creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. We're looking at the Captain America version today. It's rad, y'all. There is a very cool Taze of Karlov version of this card that came out with Commander Masters about 1.5 years ago. That's my favorite version of it. But this one's okay, I guess. It's a great time, y'all. It feels really cool to pass the turn with no visible mana and have this in your hand and being able to stop someone from board wiping you. It feels so good, y'all. Highly recommend. If you don't want to spend $10 on a singular card, highly recommend playing a proxy and testing it out before you buy it. It is worth it. I think it's worth it. I love that card. Arabo, the First Fang. All right, this is going to be our number 3. Is Arabo, the First Fang. This thing just came out in Modern Horizons. Excuse me, This thing just came out in Magic Foundations a couple weeks ago. It's a 3-drop legendary cat avatar 2/2. And it says that other cats you control get +1/+1. Whenever a Rabo or another non-token cat enters the battlefield under your control, you make yourself another cat. It's great. Thank you, Joe, very much for the follow. So this thing's great because we are leaning heavily into a token strategy. We want lots of cats and we want lots of dogs because we want to have really significant Rin and Seri activations. And this thing can just make oodles and boodles of cats when we play cats. Also, he's $1. He also has a really rad full art version. Alright, Fatal Rain with our number 2 pick is Incandescent Aria. Incandescent Aria. Thank you very much for the follow, Ryder Thyre. For the follow. I appreciate it, Ryder. Okay, Iridescent Aria is 3 mana for a sorcery and Naya colors. The art is a vibe. It's from New Capenna, and it says that this thing deals 3 damage to each non-token creature. Well, if we're going to play this card anywhere, we got to be playing it in our Naya token deck. So because it deals 3 damage, let's talk about it. So we do have a few large non-token creatures that this thing will... And those things will survive this. But any smaller non-token creatures we got likely will be dying. We probably don't want to be casting this thing while we have an Ocelot Pride on the battlefield. This thing's very cool, though. The art is very fun. It's 50 cents. And if someone else is playing a token deck... Or, excuse me, not a token deck. If someone else is playing, like, a bunch of tiny creatures... Maybe a Tetsuo Umezawa deck. This thing could wipe them out. Number 2 is John Reynolds with Reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is rad, y'all. It is a big brain commander card. It just got a reprint in the Assassin's Creed expansion. It's $5 right now. It's a 1-mana mono white enchantment, and you can activate it for 0 mana, and you can remove target attacking creature you control from combat, and you untap it. This thing is rad. Let's talk about it. So, the way that I typically see Reconnaissance played is that you will swing out indiscriminately with your entire board when you have Reconnaissance out. And then, after blockers are declared, any unfavorable matchups you have with the blockers, you remove those creatures from combat and untap them and pretend it didn't happen. It's a great time, y'all. It just makes your combat so efficient, and it also helps keep blockers for yourself. It's a great time, y'all. It's $5. Just came out in Assassin's Creed. Great suggestion. It's our number 2 pick. Thank you, John Reynolds. All right. Capped Evergreen. Are you going to make me sad, Capped Evergreen, with this Council's Judgment? Council's Judgment. Council's Judgment is a white card. It's 50 cents. It's a sorcery. And it says, starting with you, each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each Okay, Kept Evergreen. 10 out of 10. I love this one a whole lot more than the other one that just said that people couldn't draw cards. This thing's rad. Let's talk about it. So everybody's voting, and they're voting for stuff that aren't yours. And when the voting's over, those things go away. And it can target non-land permanents. It's not limited to creatures. And you get rid of the thing with the most votes. So whatever's making people the saddest, the table can vote to get rid of it. 10 out of 10. I love it. This is great. This was printed, it looks like, in the Thunder Junction Commander precon. Yeah, so it does only get rid of the thing with the most votes or tied for the most votes. So it's going to, at max, get rid of 2 things. And if you vote really strategically in voting order, you can get rid of 2 things. This is a big brain Magic card. Alright. Jetmir. Jetmir feels like a good card for the final. Sad Affliction with a Jetmir Nexus of Revels for our last card. It is a cat demon. It's a 5/4. And this thing says if we got 9 cards, our creatures get +3/+0, have trample, vigilance, and also double strike. We get those abilities incrementally. We get the vigilance when we hit 3, trample when we hit 6, and double strike when we hit 9. It's rad. The version we're looking at now is from the Cats and Dogs Secret Lair. Right now we're looking at the dog version, and we're going to flip it to the cat version. Cat version, dog version. Alright guys, that is going to be our last card of the night. I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me. Tonight we built Rin and Seri Inseparable. It's a cats and dogs tribal deck. If you want to see any of the cards we talked about tonight, y'all can check out my Moxfield page, check out the dated deck list. Y'all can get there via the link tree in the profile. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. And also, TikTok is likely going to be banned. So if you have a good time with me, please follow me on Instagram and other socials. I appreciate y'all. I hope you all have a great week. Take care.